Hi, I'm Johnny West from Open Oil, and this is my reapplication video for a Shuttleworth Foundation Fellowship for 2015. What we were able to do, thanks to the Foundation and the Fellowship in the first year, was to lay the basis for our project GaiaBase, the idea that the world needs an open data framework of a total accounting of the world's natural resources. So we put out a couple of data applications. We piloted a corporate mapping approach with BP, the ability to use open data to map systems of thousands of affiliate structures around the world. And off the back of that, we're now talking to governments, private companies, and journalists and activists about extending those data sets and approaches. We put out financial models which allowed ordinary people in upstream countries for the first time to begin to get a handle on the flows of revenues around their assets, to see what's in it for them and how vulnerable those flows could be under various conditions. And both of those data sets and launches also entitled us to a seat at the table of various policy and standards discussions. We are a key informant for the Open Contracting Partnership led by the World Bank to try and define what the data standard should be for governments around publishing extractives, contracts and information. And partly as a result of our interactions, the IMF are now saying they see the merit in publishing their own financial modelling approach. So that's all good stuff. These are good first steps. What I'd like to do with the second year is to go broader and deeper. So broader means obviously data sets. If we can do BP, we can do the top 50 oil, gas and mining companies and their affiliate structures. We can extend financial modelling from 3 to upwards of 10 countries and take on different kinds of modelling approaches and economic data sets. But perhaps more significantly, even than data sets, is broader in terms of people. We piloted these processes in the first year, and so we trained ourselves and small teams to help us to deliver these pilot applications. Now we need to systematize that and train up a couple of dozen people around each application so that we can really achieve scale. And by the end of 2015, have moved from a situation in which individuals understand these processes, what to do and what they can deliver, through network groups and to full institutional adoption by people, along with an understanding of the importance of agreeing data standards so that everybody can use everybody else's data and we achieve a network effect of public good. And in doing that, also to further the new paradigm of transparency which we've been able to begin, which is to look at this as a universal system, not to look at each individual disclosure as n+1. Now we're happy we've got 50 contracts, now we're happy we've got 70. But instead to view the whole system as 1 minus n. The 400 contracts we found is good, but represents less than 1% of the universe of contracts which should be published. The more we work on these data sets and training people up in it, the more that paradigm of 1 minus n gets embedded and we get more ambition in our communities. What do I mean by deeper? There's deeper of existing data sets and then new data sets. So in working with BP and on financial modelling and indeed digging out new contracts, we got to understand how to work with corporate disclosures across stock exchanges in the US and Canada and so on. And there are a number of higher level applications we could now go to. Corporate disclosed contracts are text searchable, and that means we could, through text mining and textual analysis, there are some cases in which we can chart how a negotiation went because we have the final signed contracts which are text searchable, and we also in some cases have model contracts put out by governments at the start of a tender process, and we can simply automate version control to see what went down in negotiations in some instances. There is also a huge wealth of information about resources under the ground and the costs that are estimated to extract them, company by company, project by project, in all of these disclosures. We need to automate ways to grab these documents by the thousand, scrape the right passages by the thousand, and compile data sets which are actually better than anything that exists in the private sector right now, unless you count a few very super expensive databases behind $30,000 firewalls. So what we're really talking about is beginning to use open data to produce investment grade services out of open data, which, because they're open, can engage governments and public as well as the current private sector investor community. And that will really help to reduce the asymmetry of information that everyone talks about. So that's deeper within existing data sets. But we also need to go literally deeper. We began at the money layer, companies and contracts, which exists in some kind of ethereal space of arrangements between humans. The next layer down is the concession blocks that those contracts are based on, the surface of the land, and then there beneath that, which is the subsoil resources themselves, and then the layers out from that. So not only the oil or iron ore, which is extracted and monetized on world markets, but what about the other physical masses which are implicated in that, the billions of cubic meters of water that go into producing the iron ore, or the billions of tons of carbon emissions that come out of burning the oil? This leads us back to what GaiaBase is as a concept. It is the idea that we need, and this can only happen through open data, a total accounting framework for the world's natural resources as a long-term global policy tool for the 21st century. We need it because we're going to continue to dig stuff out of the ground. There's going to be 10 billion people on the planet by 2050, and reliance on raw materials will continue to be a huge part of what we hope would be common prosperity. Now, what that means is that we're already pushing up against planetary boundaries in terms of climate change, obviously. Also, water use is another one. There may be others. Natural resource management is going to be a global political issue. And in the end, with sensible policy making, is actually going to require some ceding of national sovereignty, some ceding of corporate autonomy, in exactly the same way as multilateral trade treaties have, and investment treaties and regional trade blocs. This isn't politically contentious, the idea that you cede parts of national sovereignty to achieve policy goods that can only be achieved at a global level, and natural resources will naturally fall into this. There's a lot of talk about sustainable development, but in fact, right now, nobody is in a position to tell you what's truly sustainable, because we haven't got any tools which allow us to look at the global ecosystem and the interaction of these natural resource industries with it, systematically through open data. And that brings me to the last thing we need to do in the second year, which is actual advocacy of GaiaBase as a concept. I reserved the domain a year ago when I first applied to the Shuttleworth Foundation, but we haven't used it because it's such an ambitious concept to propose that you need a minimum level of credibility to even get a hearing. You build that credibility through data sets and applications and driving real innovation with practical impact. We've had a couple of successes in the first year, thanks to the first year's funding. I'm really confident we can get 2 or 3 more very successful implementations which continue to build out this 1-n paradigm. We need to set a framework to understand the whole interlocking system. So sometime during this next year, we will be in a position of credibility through proven track record and consultation with governments and international institutions, which is already happening, to be able to put the flesh on the bones of the concept of GaiaBase itself and engage in some positive advocacy for that concept. That's going to be long and slow work, and it involves a huge amount of alliance building. including very extensive and careful outreach into the business communities of various kinds, as well as governments, as well as publics, in order to make this idea even credible for discussion. But we will be in that position sometime in 2015 if we have the continued freedom to set and lead the agenda with the funding that Shuttleworth Foundation has offered us so far and might continue to offer us in the second year. And that's the basis of my reapplication process and what we like to do. And thank you once again for putting your trust in me to have got this far. Thank you.